meeting is being recorded.
Okay. So definitely going to mute. We would only ask that obviously this conversation is primarily with our panelists, our guests, Chris Richards, David. And David, I want to make sure I'm saying your last name correctly. It's Schmeichel. I always say it wrong.
No, Schmeichel.
Michael. Okay.
The E silent. Yeah, just run with the I.
And Aaron Young, you all are all just being able, the privilege of sitting in on a conversation with Unschooling Dads. Glad you all joined us. Basically, I will kick off the conversation with the founder and visionary of the Genie community, and that's Ms. Karima Akila. Take it away.
Welcome, everybody. Oh, what a wonderful introduction. I usually don't get that. I'm usually the one doing the introducing, so that feels kind of good. I like that. We might have to do that again. Thank you all so much for being here for this conversation. My name is Karima Akila, and the reason why we had this conversation, we're having this conversation, is because diversity matters. And I simply look at who ain't up in here, and then we go get them. And so when I look at who's having the conversation around unschooling, deschooling, and liberation parenting, I listen for the voices that I do not hear. And then I make a direct request for them to be here. And so I've been unschooling, homeschooling now for 20 years. I have 6 kids. I've graduated 3, and I have 3 more to go, with 1 more exiting his 12th grade year this year. And so throughout those years, I did not hear the voice of the dad. And so it's important that your voices are here. So thank you all so much for being here. I can't wait to have this conversation. Thank you so much, Otis and Jason. And Jawaria's husband is here. Hello, sir. Jawaria is one of our Genius directors in training in New York. So I'm grateful for all of you. So I'm going to be quiet because I know we have a limited time to have this conversation, and I will be in the background, but y'all have a good time. Take it away. And thank you again so much for being here. Unschooling Dads, take 1.
Thank you so much. Again, as you heard, this is more about an opportunity to share for those who have been in the unschooling journey for a while and those who are just getting into it. Typically from a voice of dads who, as in my experience, don't always get to be heard. And then when you do get to be heard, it's kind of just making the final decision of, yeah, we're going to do it or not, opposed to being a part of the conversation from the start. Not to say that it's always that way. So we'll start very simply by introducing ourselves, myself as a moderator, and then the panelists that we have here today. I am Cody Cox. I am a producer, television and live stage producer by profession. I am first a dad of biologically one who's now 23-year-old son, who pretty much came up the traditional way of schooling in both private and public schools. With my first marriage, wife's deceased, I remarried Ms. Karima Akila, we now have 6 additional children that we are together raising, 3 who are still at home and in the learning stage of school, and totally unschooling one who's never seen the inside of a classroom, who's never seen anything but homeschooling and truly unschooled and self-directed learning. So I'm in that process now, roughly 3 years of learning from the expert, my wife Karima, and doing this together. So I'm kind of a hybrid of having my biological son who's gone through the traditional way and kind of now learning unschooling and deschooling and self-directed learning the more open way, I'll say. So that's my background. That's who I am. And I'll now toss it over to Chris Richards. Thank you for coming, Chris, and being a part of this. Give us a brief introduction of who you are and your unschooling journey to this point.
Sure. Thanks for inviting me, Cody. My name is Chris Richards. I'm a father of 2 girls, well, young women, 18 and 16. started unschooling the oldest at about, I want to say 7, 8. Took her out of school and her and her sister out of school, and started off with homeschooling and realized it was much of the same. It's just that we had the role of teacher with the same, in the same framework. Little by little, decided to shed those things, those ideas of school, because we kept seeing the same issues. Eventually got to unschooling and realized that it was a thing. I had my partner Akila, who's the main researcher, like you said, went out and found out that, you know, there are other people doing this and they have a name for it. We didn't immediately jump into the name because we were kind of doing versions of our own thing. But eventually we realized, you know, there's a lot of use and a lot of sense behind the whole idea and the practice, primarily of the deschooling, because we had to get rid of a lot of schoolish mindset that we had. So there was that was heavy for us both, and it became a life. That's what we are right now.
Beautiful. Thank you, sir. Moving on to you, David. Give us a little background on, and you have to point out the fact that you're in Canada, so things are a little different.
Yes.
Go ahead, take it away, Dave.
Yeah, I am in Canada, based out of Calgary, Alberta, Canada. It's like, well, it's warming up now, but damn, it was like minus 20, minus 25 degrees. And that winter came fast. And you know, it is what it is. So just bundle up. I'm pretty new. My wife and I we're pretty new to the homeschooling game. We kicked it off when COVID hit. I wasn't interested in adding any additional stress to my kids' lives with all the mandates and requirements and just all of it. And so we decided at that point that we were just going to practice some homeschooling. And we are entrepreneurs, so we've been in business with each other for as long as we've been married, now coming on to our 14th year. I'm in the branding, marketing, communication space, and my wife was in that space, still is in that space, more supporting artists that are looking to market their services, but really pursuing an art career. And so we are here. We're at home all the time, and my kids, and my wife, and everybody, we're all in the same space down here, and it was an interesting journey. Also, Chris, I echo this need. Didn't know it at the time, but this need to deprogram how I thought schooling needed to go. And it was it's been an interesting ride. I came across Karima on the Honey, I'm Homeschooling the Kids podcast, and I'm like, what is this? There's another way to do this. Well, that's pretty cool. And it was perfectly fit in what we were looking to do as a family, because I'm constantly pushing up against the status quo with how business is done, how we should market and sell ourselves, and yet I was finding myself trying to get my kids to learn the way the old way of doing things. I'm like, but I'm like teaching and training businesses to get out of the old way of doing business, yet I'm getting my kids to follow the old paradigm. It didn't make sense. So there's a bit of a disconnect, and there was also a bit of a freeing there, because that made it aware, like there's something else I need to be looking for. And my wife, she's pretty passive in terms of the whole homeschooling context. It's really been me taking the lead on it. And that's also not typical from what I understand. Normally it's the ladies, the moms of the household that are really driving it and trying to figure it out. And in my case, and it might be because of that need to control things, I don't know, it's there's probably a therapist conversation in there. But I was also committed that my kids start to explore things differently for themselves, and that I do the work that I need to do to deprogram how I was raised. So that's the journey that I'm on right now, and I'm super grateful for all the lessons that I'm learning as I engage with people like you, Cody, and you, Karima, and everybody else who's just like breaking down the barriers. And we definitely need more of those, and more conversations with us men around that proverbial kitchen table, right? To see what else is happening, what other people are doing.
Thank you, David. And Aaron Young. Aaron, tell us a little bit about yourself and your family and where you are on this journey.
I am from Washington, D.C., born and raised. To a traditional education. I guess me personally, I actually been to probably every type of educational institution, from charter school to private school to public school to community college. I've done apprenticeships, university, 4-year, and I guess the Lord said, well, you're going to get unschooling and deschooling too. That's literally been my journey. I've had a tumultuous relationship with education. I've always been good at, A's and B's, and at school, but I've always been like rebellious of the institution of school, and but I was able to navigate it. We started homeschool also in response to COVID. My wife, Brittany, she's a teacher by trade. She was teaching for 10, 12 years. And so one conversation led to another of, do you want to come home? We can homeschool. And she just ran with that. And she has went from homeschooling traditionally, like real tradition, like, what's the Abeka, old school, you know what I'm saying? Like, and to all types of, and then I guess she found out about Genie community and unschooling and deschooling. So she's just been reading every book possible. I was reading bills. So that's what I was reading, because she was getting about, 80 to 90 grand. Actually, the year before we went homeschool, she got like a $10,000 raise, because just from her job. So then, I'm going to come home. And we had just bought a house. And so we just bought a house with your income, and you still got school debt. Like, I don't have no school debt. You got school debt. And so that's kind of been like, I'm very new. I put in the comments, I'm very immature. And so with the whole deschooling, unschooling thing. So I've had many challenges that has brought to me. I'm in the military. I've been in the military 14 years. And the reason why I joined the military is because of the structure and the continuous challenge it gives you to deal with people, to deal with problems, to give you right and left limits. And it kind of gives you an incubator for just like leadership and stuff like that. So on that hand, I thought that school could give you that. I really didn't believe, and she got me with like, I didn't care about testing and grades. I already knew like that was out the window for me. But I did think that a traditional school provided multiple opportunities for somebody to mature and will have to face problems head on, as opposed to like just hanging out the house. If it's a problem, you could just go to your room, or you could just bypass it. And I'm not the one at home. I'm working, all day. And So that's been a different perspective. Like, okay, what y'all doing? Then you come home, everybody on the couch, they looking at their pads, the wife chilling, they still got their pajamas on. You just like, I just work
Living
like
the life.
14.
Man.
It's like, yo, I want this lifestyle too. You know
But
what I'm saying? So
Aaron, you tip into a number of, first of all, know that you're not alone. You're tipping into the same concerns that probably anybody that's new to unschooling and self-directed learning face. This is not unusual. And like I said, you're not in it by yourself. And a part of us building the GNI community is for that very reason, to show that you have other folks. What do you do in that situation, or somebody you can at least text or call on to kind of share and hear their side? Though every household is different. Every household, you have to pick and choose what works for your household and what works for your family. And I think that's the beauty of the community. But you've tipped into some of the questions I was going to lead into as a part of the bigger conversation. But I'm going to take a couple steps back. One thing I meant to do from the beginning as a part of the introduction is to be very clear that we are open and welcoming to, I don't want to get blindsided or shut down for those who may not be in a traditional household, in a traditional relationship, that may be in a non-binary situation, but we're open to this traditional, open to having the conversation with all dads or all those who label themselves as dads, or at least take the leadership role or have some say-so in the education of your kids. That's it, that's all. We don't want to cut off anybody who think they're not welcome in this conversation. But some of the things you talked about, Aaron, I wanted to get into, and some of the things we talked about off camera before we started recording, is the role of the dad, in that a lot of times, David would be the exception in this panel, that it's the moms that's leading the charge of figuring out what education platform the kids are even going to go with. Do we like this, and whether it's public school, whether it's private school, whether it's charter, and then there's homeschooling, then there's unschooling, or self-directed learning, which is a whole different thing. I think Karima's situation, when she first started to homeschool, it was more of the traditional lines of, we still have to come down, and there's a curriculum, like you mentioned too, Aaron, about the Abeka. Even mention Abeka is making my skin itch. That's a whole nother thing. Just so much still of basically just having school at home, still using the same structures, the same parameters that keep the kids boxed in, and where unschooling and specifically self-directed learning eradicates those structures, and to completely become, in my opinion, free. As you pointed out, they chilling, but they have the freedom to really push into things that they're good at in my opinion, a much earlier age. They get to discover who they are at a much earlier age, and opposed to trying to fit into a box and then try to figure out who they are at 12th grade or in the college years. To me, that's one of the huge advantages of self-directed learning and unschooling. And you'll see, I've even seen your kids on the metaverse just really starting to blossom within the community that they're in. And not to just point on you, Dave's kids, oh my goodness, they're amazing in the metaverse. To see the kids work together and build their own community in that metaverse. Just as a background, both Aaron and David's kids share in the GNI metaverse online twice a week where they get together, and they're literally, to watch these kids build their own community and really structure things around what they enjoy is amazing. It's totally amazing to see. So any day y'all want to drop by, y'all should. I know David's been there plenty of times, but Aaron, definitely, I know you've seen them work on it, but definitely a place to check out to see that growth. But back to the moms leading that charge, why do you think it's harder, or I'll say more of a challenge, to bring dads to the unschooling journey? Why are dads a little more reluctant to be a part of that circle than, say, moms have been a little more open-minded, but why do you think dads have been a little more structured? Any of you jump in. Chris, I'll ask you first since we just started.
Okay. I would say for me, I always had a problem with school. Like I was growing up, I did well in school in the sense that I understood what I was being taught, but I didn't like the structure. I didn't like how we tested all the time. I didn't like all the homework. I didn't like sitting in a classroom in rows, having to raise your hand to talk. And like, it was so many little things. And I was the type of kid that would, if I did go to class, I would participate. I would engage with the teacher and ask questions because that's how I learned. But I would never do homework. I would never do the stuff that they assign you to do outside. But when it's time for test taking, I would do well on the test. I would throw off the curve all the time, primarily because like it was more about the actual content and less about the structure. So when it came time to kind of go through that whole process with my children or our children, I was a lot more lenient than I think a lot of dads would be. I understood. I was like, yeah, I get that it's not, but what about in the future? What's going to happen to them? How are they going to get a job? How are they going to survive on their own? That was always my mindset.
That part.
Yeah, and I think that's where I connect up with a lot of dads. Is that it's not so much the schooling part. It's how is this going to prepare them for the future? How are they going to be self-sufficient and independent? That was always my concern. Whereas Akila, my partner, comes from a different angle. Her angle is, well, you know, they're still living this. They're still in that system. They're still being hurt in the same way that you and I talk about before and know that these systems hurt young minds, especially young creative minds that don't fit in the necessary box of, you know, this is how a student is supposed to be. So what do we do in the meantime? Do we just let them take the hit and be like, well, it's part of growing up? And that I think is the key factor, is that she was very much about liberation in that sense. And I was very much in like, yeah, I get liberation, but they need to be able to manage life when they get out of school. So I think that might be an idea of the roles thing. Like as a father, your job is to make sure everybody's safe. At least that's how I was brought up. Your job is to make sure everybody's safe, make sure everybody has all the resources they need, and, you know, leave all the emotions and everything else to other people. That was the thing. But when I decided to have a family, or when we decided to have a family, a lot of that changed. I decided that we were going to build roles as ourselves. So Akila and I would decide what that looks like moving forward. And maybe that was a catalyst. Maybe that was a part of the reason why it was so easy to transition. Well, not easy, but it was more easy than it may have been to transition, was because we already had that kind of mentality growing up together. We're going to figure it out together. We're not taking what society tells us is how we have to be. And when it came to our children, we just applied the same principle.
Perfect. David or Aaron, you got anything to add?
Yeah. The traditional way of being raised, I definitely echo that. Christian upbringing, very, very strict upbringing. And when I was of the right age, I really had to remove myself from that situation. I didn't really know why, I just knew I had to. And so I did. And while I wandered for all intents, like aimlessly for a good 15 years, I didn't really know what the hell I was to do now that I am free of that. That journey and the consecutive inner work that my wife and I did after we met and got married and just invested into, right, under getting a better understanding of who we were as human beings in this world, understanding how this thing operates, but beyond the intellectual memorizing of facts and data and all of that, there's this emotional being there, right? That is looking for opportunity to be self-expressed and to be appreciated and understood. And even though it was a strict Christian upbringing, that was my longing as well. And because of that reason, I was never really understood. I wasn't allowed. It wasn't important. There were bigger things to focus on. But for me, there was a missing. And same goes with my wife, having immigrated to Canada from Mexico, needing a change, a different culture there, right? There was a whole lot of things that people prioritized that was not really a priority for her. And so when we came together, it was very easy, kind of like you, Chris. Like, there was just inner work to do. We didn't really know. There were some people that we trusted and admired, and had some great mentorship as a result. And that just opened it up for us. Opened it up and started to reveal, like, there was work. If there is work that we need to be doing on ourselves that I never got in school, in any capacity, where are my kids going to get that? They're not going to get it. And am I going to give them? Do they need to go through the same process that I went through, only to realize that they don't have what they are looking for? Or they don't even know what they're looking for. Like, it just didn't make sense to me anymore. It was a real need to go against the grain. It's like, if I'm going against the grain everywhere else, why the hell am I not going against the grain here?
And I'll get to that. That is what really tips things off. In the chat, it was said that it is the traditional stories that we're told, and we continue to tell ourselves, that stops the dads from taking on the unschooling journey. It is the same thing that Chris said, and David said as well. It is that we were told, or how we were raised in the thought of, you go to school, you go to college, you get a traditional job, that's how you take care of yourself. And to break that mold, and we all realized, definitely I did too, even raising my first son, I realized about 8th grade that I was like, and he was an easy kid in school, got good grades, didn't really push against the grain. But about 8th, 9th grade, his personality started to grow, and he didn't fit in the box, and he didn't. And I said the same thing that you guys did. It's like, I don't want that for him. We all want better for our kids than we had for ourselves. And we learned from where we were boxed in, and to give them that space, better yet, that freedom, if you will, to learn and to grow in a different circle, I think is what definitely changed my mind about what this is. It's gotta be something else. And unfortunately for my first son, I didn't know what that was. So we kind of scrambled and pinched and moved things around. He still continued to be in the system and graduated from public school. But now, I see this thing that I wish he had. But it's all a part of us growing out of us and sharing that with the rest of our family, specifically our kids. Aaron, did you have anything to add to that mix?
No, I'm good.
Okay,
Yeah.
cool. Just
But
wanted to make sure I wasn't
I did
missing.
want to say, I want to say it. Whenever we have this conversation, I try and make sure that people understand, especially people that are interested but don't really know if it's for them, that it's never like you have a come to Jesus moment and then all of a sudden everything makes sense. It didn't work that way for me, and for the people that I talk to, it's a similar thing. There's a lot of fear in there. There's a lot of fear about being judged. There's a lot of fear about messing up your child's life. There's a lot of fear about, like, taking on something and not being able to finish it. There's a lot of fear around the idea of going against the grain, as David puts it. But the thing that holds true is that at some point, you got to trust the person that you are. And especially if you expect to raise a child that's going to trust themselves, you kind of got to take that on for yourself. You got to know what it means to have an idea in your head and execute the idea, come what may, and adjust course as needed. I think that's one of the key things that I couldn't rock with in school. It wasn't something that they didn't operate like in that mindset. They operated in the sense of, I tell you what you need to know, regurgitate it back to me, and keep it moving. There was no room for processing. There was no room for questioning in that way, because, you know, they had other people that they needed to deal with. So at some point, you're going to need to make a decision about what it is that you believe. And if it is in fact what you believe, how do you move forward from there? Like that is a whole part of the thing. It's
think-
not an easy thing.
You hit a key word there.
Yeah.
Trust. It was that part when I came into this family and Karima was already, you know, unschooling, and I was still skeptical. I was like, you know, all right, if y'all say that works, I guess, you know. And a couple of things that worked for me. We did a seminar of sorts, and we had a conversation with some adult unschooled people who had already graduated and were adults and successful in life. That was the key for me, who had been unschooled. One who's a glass blower, another guy went on to school who's a business major, he's an MBA, and having these traditional jobs, but had never, for at least for their primary years and high school years, didn't sit in a traditional classroom. Didn't really sit in a classroom, at least for the young man, until he went to college. And I was like, how did he even do that? You know, and then there were ways, and, you know, she explained to me how that worked, and he, being a very untraditional, I had to see that to know that it was okay. I still had these doubts that, you know, they're not going to be, you know, doctors or engineers or any of the other traditional type of occupations. They're going to have to be entrepreneurs. They're going to have to be the non-traditional lifestyles. But that's not the case at all. Obviously, people come through unschooling and become quite successful, and also defining what success is for you. That's a huge one.
Yes.
What we've been traditionally told is success: a big house, a big car, you're a doctor, lawyer. Those things mean success, but not necessarily. You know, success for me was, can you take care of yourself? That's all that really matters to me. That you're not in my pocket and sleeping on my couch. That's success for me. But I mean, I think how we define that is very crucial to understanding and allowing that freedom. But you also spilled into a larger conversation. For some people, this journey of unschooling and self-directed learning, it's hard to keep it in the box in the education world. What you come to realize is you can't just let that freedom be in education and then cap it off with the rest of their life.
Exactly. Yep.
It begins to involve all aspects of your family. And so my question, and I'll throw it out to you, how does unschooling spill over into your everyday parenting? Or, you know, how does it change how you looked at raising your kids in general, outside of just education? And I'll open that up to whoever wants to jump in there. David or Aaron, feel free as well.
I think Abdul,
I do see you, Abdul. I'm gonna get to questions outside of the panel on the second half, but let's stick to the panel now. But I do want to get to you. I will allow others to chime in just a minute.
Awesome. Just making sure.
Sure, I got you.
What was the question?
It is how did the unschooling, and it might have worked the other way around. It might have been the freedom parenting and opening up things in general that led you to educating your kids this way. Or for some, it happened more of here's a freedom way or a more self-directed way of letting them learn in school, but it spills over into your everyday life. How does that affect, or how did that spill over or reactions work in your family?
Yeah, well, it's a culmination for me and our family. It was a culmination of a few things, seemingly separate and not connected, but definitely interconnected now that I look at it, you know, in hindsight, in reflection. Conversation with one of my sons. So I have twin 11-year-olds, boy and a girl. and one of my son's teachers talking about his attention span and almost immediately going to the typical ADD, attention deficit, blah, blah, blah. Not to diminish that by any stretch, but I knew my son, right? And this is a, I have the fortune and by my own design that I was always at home, right? I run my own business, and you know, the ebbs and flows and the ups and downs of all of that had me at home. And so I knew who my son was. And so when that conversation happened, it was off for both me and my wife. It's like, no, that's not my experience of my boy. Maybe, you know, lack of interest. I mean, I could definitely vouch for that. And Chris, you've mentioned it a few times, right? It's like, yeah, I'll play the game, but that doesn't mean I'm vested. You know, there's other things that I'd much rather focus on.
Absolutely.
And so that was one of the first things. It was like, no, it's not that. And I knew with confidence that that wasn't that. And then when COVID hit, it's like, I'm giving away too much control to a system that has groomed me to say, trust me, but that I don't trust. and it really came to a head at that moment. It wasn't an issue before. It's like, okay, you know, we're busy. We'll tolerate it. We'll let it slide. And it's probably for the best. And we're going to learn some stuff anyways. I mean, I went through public school. It's not to say it was completely bad, but I couldn't wait to get out of school too. You know, what's that about? Why can't we have an experience where it's like, we're always looking forward to what we get to learn next. And if that's not the majority, there is something seriously off there. And so it just became a thing that we decided to take on. If it's not what I'm committed to, and it comes to really knowing who I am, who I'm committed to as a human being in this world, like how do I want to show up? And I think it's a necessary requirement now more than ever for us fathers to really know, who are we in the world? What are we in the service of? And are we in the service of that with our kids? Truly, can we honestly answer yes to that question? And if no, that's okay. There's work to do then, isn't there? To really understand, what is it that I'm committed to? And when I did that honest look internally to what I was committed to, I saw that enabling my kids to be clear who they were in the world was not going to be delivered in the school system. And so it was easy at that point. It's like, it was not easy. It's hard. It's still not easy. I'm countless every day. I'm doubting whether I'm doing the right thing, right? Like it's just it's ongoing, but I'm reminded of that bigger reason. And I get recalibrated with that bigger reason. And then I dig in and do what I do as a man, as a father, and I figure it out. Right.
It was hard. You
Make
could
the
have said
connections.
you could have said it.
But
no, man.
I want to go PG-13 as best I can.
It's cool. It's cool. Thank you, David. I think that's, and you hit it again. That word trust just resonates again. Not only trust in the system, but trust in yourself. I think is pivotal. It's really, you said it. You talk about it, but are you doing it?
Yeah.
And that part is, I think, a real challenge for dads. It is that whole, this ain't how I came up. This ain't the box I grew out of. So we gonna give it a shot.
Yeah.
But it goes that way. And for those who are new, as you can see, Aaron, who's new to it as well, you can see this is still an ongoing thing. As David just said, it is not something you flip a switch and is all gravy. It is something, that's why I call it a journey. It's something that you continue to work on and find ways to continue to allow your kids to blossom. That's the bottom line. What David uses as a recalibration, as he said, I love that. You check in, say, wait a minute, this is why we're doing this.
Well, and you need the right network to check in too. And
well,
I think that's another big factor for us dads. My wife actually had made a comment, 2 days ago about how it was a passing comment, and I won't go into too much detail around it, but it's like it seems like men have a harder time finding, deeper, connected, more meaningful relationships. And there's a part of me that got triggered on that. It's like, but there's a measure of truth there too, because we get so focused on the particular thing, we forget to spend the necessary time to make sure that we have the right people around us that are supporting and are tapped in, so that we do have that sounding board, right? When I'm all caught up in my mind because of all these things, external things that are going on, and the internal things in the family is like just not operating the way Schmeichel optimization is supposed to be, this created farce in my mind. Well, who am I having that conversation with in order to get it out of my way? Because it's just a story that I'm telling myself. But if I don't know that, and I think it's the truth, I'm burning the whole world down around me just to make it work, even though it's completely unworkable.
So true. You said a mouthful there, David. So true. Appreciate that. I don't want to move on too far, and I know I want to keep us honest to time. I'm gonna open up, unless any of you had anything to add to that, Chris or Aaron. I was going to open up. Let me pause here first to give you all an opportunity to say anything else on that, and then if not, we'll open up to the floor for questions. Anything, Aaron, Chris?
Well, I wanted to add, it has gone horrible. I'll use the word it has gone horrible. I mean, it was definitely a season of me and Brittany just going like head to head, and there was a little rocky there as far as our vision of like what it is our home was going to look like. Because definitely a time there I felt like, well, is my vision for my family being taken away, and just like my wife has the full reins on like what's going on because she's at home all the time.
Mhm.
And I'm at work. What part do I have to play in that? I mean, where do I come in raising my kids? So, and she has adjusted too, because and we had a conversation about her trusting me to be a dad, and she wasn't really doing that. And you're saying, we being this, parenting freely, like, and trusting yourself as a parent, but I didn't feel like I was being trusted as a dad, because some of my views had butt against deschooling, unschooling. And I think it was a whirlwind of situations, like we had money and all that stuff. But I grew up very much emotionally unsupported.
Mhm.
So I went to school, and I think I probably had one conversation with my mom where she sat down and listened to me. Like, oh, how you doing, son? Like, rub your back and all that. Maybe one time. Other than that, it wasn't no lovey-dovey conversations with my mom and dad. I had both my parents. It wasn't no, son, you got this, or cheerleaders. It was like the only response I got from my parents when I got in trouble. And so, I really, on one hand, it gave me a lot of time to really be imaginative and do my own thing, really, when I look back at it, you know what I'm saying? But on the other hand, I know that I needed that emotional support. I probably would have been a different perspective on like who I was and my relationship with them, and not so closed off when I disagree with people or something like that. So I really thought school was going to give me the opportunity for my kids to come to me and be like, oh, dad, this what happened to me. And I could be that voice of mentoring and emotional support. That's how far I thought. I was like, yo, they're going to go to school. They're going to bring back their problems. I'm going to be like, yo, I'm your best friend. This is what you need to do and navigate through those challenges. Now they're at home all the time. And some of them challenges is me. And how am I going to like be that mentor for them if like I'm the only person that's making them do anything?
Mm,
And for a season, it was like that. Like, Brittany was like Uber, like not telling them to do nothing. I was like, yo, the trash need to be taken out though, bro. Like,
yeah.
so I gotta come home, work, and throw the trash out and do the laundry, and they ain't gotta do no chores. They ain't gotta do nothing because that's like infringing on their freedom. Like, bro, nah, that ain't about to be happening right here. Nah,
Yeah.
y'all already chilling. You know what I'm saying? You don't get to clean your room. What?
Yeah.
There's the theory, and
And there's
then
a
there's the
practice.
actuality, reality of making it
Yes,
work.
sir. Yeah.
So,
And we totally get you. And I always pinpoint, you have to do what works for your family. What looks right in somebody else's house, it may not look right in my house, and vice versa.
Mhm.
There is a shaping and molding, and that's what you all are going through now. That has to be a fit for everybody. There's nothing wrong, in my opinion, still having expectations of chores, but it's the conversation of why these chores need to be done.
Right.
It's just a different approach, but it's a kind of what I said to my son. Still, when you get your own place, you won't have to take care of it, so you may as well start training here now. It's just a different approach. It's a different, and I'm not saying that I got all the answers because none of us do.
Yeah.
But it is a shaping and a molding to get to that place. And as we said, an everyday challenge to getting there. But we with you, brother. Like David said, this is the sounding board. This is exactly why we're here.
Yeah.
To provide that community to wrap around, hey, I don't know what I'm doing here. It's cool. We totally get it. But I don't want to. I want to be conscious of time. Abdul, you had something earlier. You had your hand raised. I want to give you an opportunity to share and or ask a question if you have one.
Oh, nah, thank you. I'm just it's a pleasure to be here. I didn't even know what to expect. My wife told me about it. I said, all right, I'll join. But it's like listening to all your brothers, speak your mind and speak how you feel about the whole homeschooling journey is beautiful because it's practical, and you have the theory, right? Myself, I'm into real estate development and construction, right? So I'm an entrepreneur, being in business for the last, 20 years, right? With my wife, we work together. So structure, is key, right? You have to have discipline, right? Even, being an entrepreneur, I'll tell people the most power that we have is the fact that we have control of our time,
Yeah.
right? And then we can say no, right? That's about it, right?
Mhm.
But we do have clients, we do have bosses, right? Right. Even if you the director, you control the shots, right? You still have to cater to people. You still have to be considerate of people thoughts and feelings of who you're working with, right? I've been in the homeschooling journey, I guess the last 3 years. Right, the unschooling, the same like what Chris was saying, and brother Arnold,
Aaron, go ahead.
brother Aaron was saying about the structure, about basically how we men, we speak about how we the breadwinners of the family. So all that freedom, that's nice, but how they going to support themselves, right? How they going to contribute to society. I'm not just raising somebody that is going to be a free body just out there. My job is to raise them and be a mentor and guide them, right? So that was my thought about the whole homeschooling, because my wife, she was raised at a position in her life. She was homeschooled. I wasn't homeschooled per se, but she was homeschooled. So she experienced it, right? And I heard about it. So I was like, okay, I was open to it. But then going through the journey, and then deschooling, learning about it, and being from where we're from, I won't say we anti-institution or anti the man, right? But we understood that you had to go through some type of system in order to be AKA successful in this society, right? I always used to say that if you're not an entrepreneur, if you're not a business owner, and if you're not an innovator, you at least have to go to school to get a degree to get a job, right? Because you're not gonna just be lazy, and then you want to be a high paying worker. You know, you don't just want to be a regular worker. You want to be a high paying worker, right? But I didn't live that particular life because I actually, you know, I got some degrees of the School of Hard Knocks. So I understood that, you know, institutional education is not, you know, everything, but I also have degrees, right, and certificates and licenses, right? So I understood that you need these type of things to operate, right? But my biggest transition was COVID, right? How COVID really taught me and showed me that people can be homeschooled, right? You could learn from home. You don't necessarily need to go to the institutional to be learned, but you still need some type of structure, right? Because life, you know, you need some type of structure in life, right? To be disciplined, you know, if you want to be successful in any endeavor that you want to do, you need to have some type of discipline, and you can form that discipline of how you see fit based on your vision of what you want to do, right?
That's it is forming
Yeah.
the structures around the places in which fit and not necessarily the ones that are being set for you. That's
Exactly.
That's a huge
And society wants to set the way they want us to operate and then the way they want us to think, you know, for their particular purpose. They want everybody to be in line. And then they constantly infringing on our freedoms, right? But we don't know they're infringing on our freedoms because we don't even know our freedoms, right? And our rights, right? Because we're not necessarily taught those type of things in school. We're just taught to take a test, like Chris was saying, pass the test, and then once you pass the test, keep it moving.
So
right?
let me ask you, I'm sorry, before you move on, let me ask you, like, how do you think, just to get us to kind of think about what that would look like, how do you think school would teach you what freedom looks like? How do you think a school would teach you that's in school freedom?
right.
Well, school's supposed to teach you critical thinking, right?
Right.
That's the beginning of it, right? Critical thinking, right? Thinking on your own, but it doesn't teach you critical thinking.
Exactly.
I would even push back to say that, is it supposed to teach that?
No.
Or is that what we wanted to teach? It is not
if you want your workers.
I don't think so.
Right.
I don't think so. Like that, for me, so that, to answer your previous question, that was one of the things that I immediately, like, I saw the benefit to taking it outside of just education. The idea of deschooling, the idea of looking at all your preconceived notions and really examining where they come from. Do they still apply? Is it still workable? Right? So I had a lot of expectations going through school, college, all that stuff, you know, get the degree, get the good job, get in as an intern, work my way up, become CEO eventually, blah, 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 like the whole lot. It doesn't go that way for everybody. When I got to college, I realized, you know, a lot of those sweet internships, that's like family members and relationships that get those really neat opportunities and those real things. Like, that's a real thing. And if we don't talk about it honestly and openly, then you're going to have a bunch of people paying a bunch of money feeling like the degree itself is what's going to get you to where you need to go. And that's not the case. A lot of times it's relationships, right? And in a similar way, I think right now as adults, we tend to forget that the environment we grew up in. We didn't grow up with high-speed internet. we didn't grow up being able to communicate with somebody at any point of the day on the other side of the world and kind of share knowledge and share experience and commodify that experience in some cases without actually needing to have that piece of paper. Like, we didn't grow up like that, but we're still grooming children to do the same thing. And we didn't grow up in the world that they are in now. We're just trying to figure that stuff out now. And we're trying to shove our past down our children's throat to say, this is the way you need to go. Like, that's not practical. Like, if we sit back objectively and get the fear, get out of the fear of, you know, there's a path that's set for us. And if we just follow the path, everything will be okay. we all know people that used to work for somebody, especially during COVID. You got to understand that a lot. People that own businesses are just people. They have responsibilities just like you. So if it means paying you and feeding their family, you're going to lose that job. And there's nothing that they can do about it. There's nothing, no amount of, saying I'm so sorry is going to help you pay the bills. But that's just the way of the world. If you're working for somebody, that is a possibility. That's how it goes. But we don't talk about that stuff. It's all about the pipeline. Go to college, get that job, get a high paying job, blah, 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 blah. But when something like COVID hits, what happens? Everybody's on the street now like, I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do. But if it's a situation where you're being honest with where we are right now and where society is right now, and understanding that there's no institution in this world that's going to teach you what freedom looks like. There's no institution in this world that's going to prioritize your life over the multitude of lives that they can get to start working in a job market that the whole economy is based on, that the government is going to use that GDP to deal with other governments. Like if you already understand all these, how everything is interconnected, there's no way you could continue to operate as usual. It doesn't, it's not practical. It doesn't make sense to me, I should say. It doesn't make sense to me. You can't operate it like that if you believe in these things.
Indeed. Look, I want to make sure that I'm cognizant of your time. We've set this up from 7 to 8 p.m. and we're right at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. But I don't want to cut this conversation off either. So if those who have to leave, I would understand, because we've only asked you to obligate till this time. We'll continue for a little while longer, not much longer, because I got a game to get to. But I do want to at least leave some more time. We didn't get a chance to anybody else that wanted to share or ask question. There were two things in the chat that I wanted to share too. David said that, he was speaking to Aaron, that he runs his household with high expectations and he works to bring a gallon of grace to the best of his abilities. It's a collaborative co-creation. Totally agree with that. Boy, so I understand that one. Stuart, I put in the chat that is this like social engineering that institutions have done to us? At its finest, I'd say. At its finest. That's my opinion.
It's created to make workers.
Say it again.
I said it's created to make workers, not entrepreneurs.
Exactly.
That's not how it's set up.
Critical thinkers. The other thing we said, not at all. So if there's anybody else that wanted to share, this is an opportunity to do so. Also shout out to HBCUs. I know Chris went to Morehouse, and Aaron, I know Brittany went to Howard. I'll give her a little shot. So shout out to my HBCUs out there. I went to Morgan State myself. Go ahead. If someone was about to jump in there, go ahead, Jason.
Yes, I am actually a granddad for my 11-year, almost 12-year-old granddaughter.
I'm a granddad too, so it's all good here. Go ahead.
The homeschooling, and it's all new to me. And I think the question that I have though is, how do you fill the void of the social aspect of what we got in going through school? Like I played football, track. I was in a lot of organizations, a lot of clubs, a lot of social things. How do you compensate for that through homeschooling? Because they don't get that social aspect of it.
Mm-hmm.
Anybody can jump in. I have my opinion, but
I would say like it's a similar. It's gonna sound weird, but follow me for a little bit. I'd say it's the same way that when you're looking for a special relationship, do you go to the place where a lot of people are, or do you go to the place that has interest to you so that you can find other people that are interested in the things that you're interested in? Like if you're, as an adult, the same thing applies as a child. Like it's one thing to dump a bunch of kids in a room and say, go ahead and socialize, and a different thing to say, hey, I know that you're interested in XYZ. you know, online, I found this place where they're doing this, the same thing that you're interested in. A bunch of people are probably going to be there. Let's go there. You go there and they have their fun. They're going to interact with people because it's the nature. It's the nature of us as people. If we have an interest and there's similar people that share that interest, you're going to want to communicate in one way or the other. Like how they navigate that is a different argument for me, but it's the same thing. You're interest led. Wherever your interests go, you're going to run into other people that are like that, and because they're interested in what you're interested in, you're going to talk.
Right, and I understand that.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying sports is everything in life, but it's a big part of life, I think.
But it's not to say that they don't play sports. I mean, there are programs, whether it's boys and girls clubs, whether there's clubs like AAU, and some schools either. I know in the district that I grew up in, Prince George's County, they did it all the time with homeschoolers. If you registered as a homeschooler, you can play in that high school team.
Oh,
So
really?
it depends on, you know, there are ways to get to sports.
See, I didn't know that was even possible.
Yeah.
Yes, definitely. They have space specifically for homeschoolers.
Okay.
And if you think about too, the enrollment of basketball sport, let's use sport as an example, because it's the easiest one to associate. It's usually encouraged, at least initially, by the parents anyways, right? And so whether you're in the school system or you're out of the school system, it's encouraged by the parent. And so the opportunity for me, even though my kids might not have mentioned it, right? Like, you know what I'd like to try is blah, blah, blah. I'm going to enroll them in something and they're gonna try it out. And then I get to see how that's going for them. Because while it's self-directed, it's not unstructured, like Chris says. There needs to be some guide rails to be put in place. And that is my responsibility. That is my wife's responsibility. It is not my 11-year-old's responsibility. She has no idea yet what that looks like. They have some things that it's clear they love it, right? And so it's an easy win to put them in situations where they do more of that. But the things that they don't know about, I get to dangle the carrot and set the seed and go, hey, have you ever considered? And then give them the runway to start to explore and create.
Perfectly said. Thank you, Jason. I hope that helped you some. I'll say to Jason, and if anybody else has anything else, if not, I got a couple closing remarks. I'll leave the floor open to anybody else.
I did want to add something, Cody, about a lot of you guys have at-home jobs, like you're doing at home, and you're in that environment while you're homeschooling. And I just wanted to open it up to, like, in my case where I'm working, you know, I'm getting up, you know, I got a PT, I got to get up at 6, I got to be at the house. Most time my kids are asleep. And literally when this thing called, I just came from dropping somebody off from doing my job and logged on at 6:55. And most days you know, they're usually bedtime or they're wrapping up. And then I got my time. You know, I'm like, dang, I just came home trying to decompress from the job. So trying to find that balance for a guy that is working all day, and how is he contributing to almost the wife is at home all day with them. When you got, you know what I'm saying, that can someone speak to that? Because some of my guys might be in that type of situation.
Man, there are times where I'm home all day and I have not talked to my kids at all. Right? Like they're like right over there.
Right.
And I'm busy doing my thing. I got to focus and do what needs to be done. Right. And so I think from my perspective, it's simple, not easy. We find the time that we have available, and then we create something. We create, there's a dynamic, there's an opportunity, there's something to do together. And it's not easy having them right there, right? Like they don't always want to do what I want to do. And, you know, I got to pull them out of the house. And then I'm like, wow, what's the point? Like, what? And so it's kind of the same, and it's a little bit different. in terms of the environment, but I think we just, for me, I just, I get to keep trying. I don't know, sometimes it works and we do something and I feel good about it. Sometimes I don't, and I question it all, right? I imagine you kind of feel the same.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a similar thing for me too. Like we've, as a family, we kind of grown to a space where we can all be in the exact same room, doing our own thing, completely separate from one another. We don't even look at each other sometimes. It's nothing inherently wrong with that. But to speak directly to what you're talking about, if I were to be out of the house for most of the day, so like if I have a particular client that I have to be on site and I'm away for most of the day and I come back, depending on how I feel, I have to make an effort to engage. If that is what I want, if I'm like, you know what, I've been missing them and I really want to know what their day's been like, I have to make that effort. And it's outside of my nature sometimes, but it's worth it in my mind. In my mind, it's worth it because that's what I need for them, or I need personally. If I'm being honest, I need that for myself. And I also know that it's important to stay connected in that way. You get what I'm saying? Like, so I have to kind of pull out of myself and do something that maybe I wouldn't normally do to engage, because that is important to me. And like I said before, it's about when you have a thought or a thing in your mind that this is what I believe, then it's the actions that make sense. It's not about like, I just believe it in my head and it's going to stay there. Some action needs to come from that belief. And that's what that looks like for me.
Great. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. We're going to wrap here, but there's a couple pointers I want to make sure that I hit. Number one, because this is obviously what we wanted to do, have a great conversation and offer support and wraparound support. This is a community you can come to. I am posting in the chat right now a link to our Genii community. Please make sure you sign up there, join us there. We'll have additional talks. There are other things we're doing. There are several groups within that community, but Unschooling Dads is where this conversation grew out of, and it's a group on our community. Please do join us, continue conversations. You'll see the other things that the Genii community is doing along the Genius School. And within there's also the Genii DAO. We got a whole nother conversation with dads in the DAO. That's one we should definitely have. But it's a decentralized, autonomous organization. It is where we are really pushing the notion of Web3 and including things, everything from NFTs to virtual reality to our metaverse and all the things above in that space, and where decentralizing education and decentralizing technology crosses. It's an interesting conversation. Definitely join us there on our network. Also, the Genii app, soon to come to a household near you. If you've heard all of that, this is in the community as well. We have an app that will chronicle for homeschoolers how you can set up your transcript for going into college, into other areas. It will document what you're doing as a homeschooler and as a self-directed learner. The Genii app coming to a phone near you. So join us again on our community. We also have Kids in the Metaverse, our community that is blossoming. Both Aaron and David's children are a part of that metaverse. And we have five pillar, did I count them right? 1, 2, I counted wrong. Either way, we have in real life 5 pillar genius communities coming out of the Genius School. We have 2 in Kampala, Uganda. We have one coming to, maybe actual several coming to the Atlanta area, which we are. Prince George's County, gorgeous Prince George, right outside of DC in Maryland, has a community coming very soon. That's Aaron's wife, Brittany, starting that community. And in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, a couple communities coming up there, hopefully next year, early next year as well. So again, I just wanted to get that information out. all of that is part of our community. Click that link, you can find out more. But thank you all for joining us. This is the first, but definitely not the last opportunity we'll have to have these conversations. Join us again. We'll post that information within the community as well. And Chris, yes, good having another. Absolutely, brother. Come back. We can continue these conversations. And again, this is the place to come. This is the community we're building to support each other in this freedom parenting, as we like to say. All right. Thank you all so much. I'm going to go watch. Hopefully my Redskins beat up on and for those who can't take the word Redskins, I'm sorry, I refuse to call them that other new name. They're still the Washington football team for me. But thank you all so much. We had a great time. I really did appreciate specifically David, Chris, Aaron, for you all taking your time and sharing with us and being so open and transparent. I think that's a huge part of being real about the conversation as well. Thank you so much, and I'll see y'all next time.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night.
Take care.